The snow fell heavier than it had all winter, cloaking New York streets in a thick, quiet white. Past midnight, the city, usually ever awake, seemed to slumber under the storm's weight. Streetlights cast a faint orange glow through the haze, and wind wailed between empty buildings. A sleek black Bentley glided slowly along the deserted street, tires crunching softly against the snow. Inside, Ethan Carter sat, one hand on the leather steering wheel, the other tweaking the heat. The world outside blurred white, and he had no reason to drive at this hour, save for his usual sleeplessness. As he turned onto Lexington Avenue, he spotted someone at a bus stop. Squinting, he slowed the car to a stop. There, huddled on a cold metal bench, sat a young woman in a nurse's uniform. Her dark hair was damp with snow, her shoulders shaking under a too thin coat. She sat rigid, hands buried in her pockets, eyes distant. Her phone lay useless in her lap, screen dark, battery dead. Ethan's brow creased. Without pause, he parked and stepped out. The cold bit through his coat, but he barely felt it. He approached quietly, snow muffling his steps. She didn't look up until he spoke. "You're coming with me." Her head jerked toward him, eyes wide with alarm. "Excuse me? I don't know you." He met her gaze, voice steady but firm. "I'm not leaving you here to freeze. That's not happening." She stood quickly, stepping back. "I'm fine," she said, though her voice quivered and her teeth chattered. "I'm waiting for the next bus." "There's no next bus," he replied, glancing down the empty street. "Not tonight. Everything stopped. No taxis, no trains. You're in scrubs in a snowstorm." "I'll figure it out," she insisted, hugging herself tightly. He didn't move closer, but his gaze held her. Not pity, not attraction. Something deeper, like recognition. He slipped off his long black coat and held it out. "Put this on." She hesitated, then took it, slipping it over her shoulders. It was warm, faintly cedar, scented, and dulled the cold sting. "I can take you home," he said simply. "Where do you live?" "Harlem," she answered warily. "Too far to walk. No cabs getting through this. My car's heated, and I'm not a psychopath. You can sit in the back, and I'll take you wherever you need, or you can stay here and risk hypothermia. Your choice." She studied him. He looked familiar, though she couldn't place why. His face had a sharp, classic structure. Cold blue eyes, tailored suit under a dark scarf, hair dusted with snow. He seemed like someone who'd never waited at a freezing bus stop. Against her instincts, her body decided first. Her legs moved before her voice. "Fine," she murmured. He opened the passenger door. She slid in, unsure if this was a mistake, unsure of anything but the warmth enveloping her. The door shut softly, muffling the wind. She watched him walk around and get in, glancing at her once before pulling away. Neither spoke as the car moved through the snowy street. Two strangers in a silent vehicle, bound by an unlikely moment and the mercy of a man who never stopped for anyone until tonight. The heater's hum filled the silence as the Bentley glided through snow-dusted streets. The windows cleared, revealing the city glittering under white. Inside, the warmth was startling after the bitter cold. Sophia Mason sat stiffly, clutching the coat he'd given her. She pulled it closer, breathing in its unfamiliar but comforting scent. Money, yes, but also something calm, safe. She glanced at the driver. He hadn't spoken since she got in, his focus on the road, profile sharp in the dashboard's glow. Everything about him was precise. His posture, his watch, the way he gripped the wheel. "Thank you," she said softly, more habit than expectation. He didn't look at her. "You don't need to thank me." "You were freezing." She hesitated. Still, most wouldn't have stopped. A faint smile tugged at his lips. "I'm not most." The response could have sounded arrogant, but it didn't. It was just true. Silence fell again, and Sophia leaned back, exhaustion hitting now that she was warm. 14 hours on the hospital floor, short-staffed, no lunch, a patient coding in her last hour. She hadn't meant to miss the last bus. But life kept tilting toward collapse. Rent late, her second job cutting shifts, student loans hounding her. He turned into an underground garage, descending into a private entrance of polished concrete and soft lights. Sophia's eyes widened. This wasn't just any building. "You live here?" she asked, brows raised. "For now," he replied, parking. "Come on, you're staying tonight?" She blinked. "What? It's not a question," he said, stepping out. "You need sleep. I have space?" Her instincts flared. "Can't stay at a stranger's place." He paused by her door. meeting her eyes without pressure. No strings. I'll take the guest room. Lock the door if you want, but you're not wandering out in that storm. She bit her lip, half her mind screaming this was mad, the other half heavy with fatigue and the memory of that frozen bench. After a moment, she got out. Inside, the apartment stunned her. Floor to ceiling windows, warm lighting, a roaring fireplace. Silence so complete it felt sacred. Elegant but not cold, tasteful masculine, not showy. Take the room on the left, he said, pointing to a hallway. Clean clothes in the dresser, they'll be big, but warm. She turned slowly. Why are you doing this? He shrugged. Because I can. Because I have a conscience. That answer lingered as she walked to the guest room. The bed was pristine, sheets smelling of lavender and luxury. Everything was perfect yet lived in, like someone with everything who still felt nothing. 15 minutes later, in an oversized gray sweater and sweatpants swallowing her, Sophia stepped into the kitchen. She meant to ask for water but froze. Ethan was at the stove, cooking. Not a chef, not takeout, just him in a white t-shirt and dark slacks, stirring a pot. He glanced over, noticing her. Figured you might be hungry. She blinked. What are you making, Raymond? He said simply. Nothing fancy, just warm. She stepped closer, surprised at how ordinary he looked now. Just a man. Not a billionaire, someone who saw her and fed her. As she sat at the counter, he set a bowl before her with chopsticks. She stared, confused. This isn't what I expected. He looked at her, eyes unreadable. Neither morning. Light spilled through tall windows, casting soft gold across the guest room. Sophia woke to coffee's scent and the strange comfort of sheets, softer than any she'd known. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then it hit. The snow, the Bentley, the stranger who made Raymond at 2 in the morning. She found a note on the kitchen counter, written in precise, slanted handwriting. Chore cab money's on the table. Leave when you're ready, but if you want to talk again, call me. Beneath it, a crisp $100 bill and a business card, Ethan Carter, Carter Global Investments. She stared at the name. It rang a bell. Magazines, finance blogs, some Forbes lists skimmed at a checkout. So that's who he was. She took the money but left the card. 3 days passed. She didn't call. But on the 4th evening, at a community health fair she volunteered for, she saw him again. He stood at the back of the event hall, silent among the bustle of nurses, patients, and donors. No fanfare, no entourage. Just him in charcoal gray, hands in his coat pockets, eyes scanning until they found her. Sophia was helping an elderly man into a chair for a free checkup. He had no insurance, no family, just a worn coat and a gentle smile. She knelt, speaking softly, taking his blood pressure with care, as if every person deserved dignity. From across the room, Ethan watched, unmoving, but something in his expression shifted, subtle, profound. When the crowd thinned, Sophia noticed him. She hesitated, then approached. You followed me here? She asked, half teasing, half unsure. No, he said. I fund this program yearly. I just didn't expect you. She folded her arms. Well, here I am. He glanced around. You volunteer after 14-hour shifts. She shrugged. People need help. I know what it's like to have none. He nodded quiet, then said, My mother was a nurse. She brought me to places like this as a kid. I hated it then, but now I get it. Sophia tilted her head. You never mentioned that. There's a lot I don't mention? He replied, a faint smile touching his lips. They stood silent for a beat. Then he said, Come with me, just for coffee. No pressure. She hesitated but nodded. Coffee became a walk, then a bench at Central Park's edge, where snow had melted to reveal earth. They didn't talk money or careers. Just insomnia, bad cafeteria coffee, books they'd started and never finished. It became a pattern. Over weeks, they kept meeting. Maybe not by chance, she wondered, but never asked. Sometimes at the hospital cafeteria late at night. Sometimes a driver took her to a quiet spot where he waited with hot chocolate or her favorite chips, remembered from a casual mention. They never labeled it, never held hands. But it felt more real than anything she'd known. They weren't dating. Just two people learning to live again. One night, on the Metropolitan Museum steps, sharing a silence full of unspoken thoughts, she looked at him. You're different from what people say about you. He turned to her, voice low. So are you? She smiled. What do they say about me? That you're too kind for your own good. She shrugged. It's not kindness, it's humanity. He looked at her long. Then maybe I'm trying to remember mine. She didn't reply, just leaned back, gazing at stars piercing the New York haze. For the first time in years, the night felt gentle. Ethan Carter always preferred silence, where he felt most in control, most himself. Success came early, too early. By 30, he'd built and sold a tech firm, then turned to finance, where his ruthless precision earned envy or avoidance. Money never filled his life's silence, only padded its walls. At 12, his mother died. Cancer, swift and merciless. A nurse at a small hospital. She stayed late with dying patients, brought blankets to the homeless, kissed her son goodnight even when exhausted. His father, cold and business-obsessed, didn't know how to handle a grieving child, so he sent Ethan to boarding school and buried himself in reports. Ethan learned not to need anyone, not to expect warmth, not to hope for softness. By 25, he had millions, by 30, billions. None of it dulled his mother's memory. In his private office, behind glass and polished walnut, one photograph never moved. A faded image of his mother in her nurse's uniform, smiling as if nothing could go wrong. Sophia's uniform was nearly identical. It struck him first, before her trembling hands or stubborn voice. He never told her. Instead, he worked in silence. Through discreet channels, he paid off her student loans, created a health scholarship in her name at her old nursing school. No announcements, no credit. He noticed her hospital's low-income care program struggling. An anonymous donation arrived, enough for 3 years. He was careful, never letting her see his moves. To Sophia, he was just Ethan. Strange, quiet, generous in small ways, never showy. She didn't know how closely he watched her world. How he rerouted meetings to sit at her conferences, or waited hours outside her hospital in a blizzard to ensure she reached her shift safely. He told himself it wasn't control. It was giving her freedom to do what she loved. He'd seen burnout in his mother's eyes near the end. He wouldn't let Sophia carry that weight alone. Some nights, after their quiet meetings, he'd return home, stare at his mother's photo, and think of Sophia's smile, her fierce care for those with nothing. You'd have liked her. He once murmured to the picture. You were the same. But he never said this to Sophia. Not yet. He was still learning to open that buried part of himself, locked away when a boy in a black suit stood by a casket and stopped believing the world could be soft. Sophia was changing that with every laugh, every late night story over takeout and mismatched tea mugs, chipping at decades-old armor. But she didn't know what he did in the shadows. He didn't do it for thanks. He did it because she made his silence less endless. For a man like Ethan Carter, that was everything. The hospital hallway reeked of antiseptic and stale coffee. Nurses darted between rooms, doctors barked into phones, and overhead lights buzzed faintly, like a wary heart. In room 412, a figure lay still on a narrow bed. Pale, breathing slow, dark hair strewn across the pillow like dulled sunlight. Sophia had collapsed mid-shift, between 2 patient rooms. She hadn't eaten in 12 hours, worked a double shift, and was halfway through another when her knees gave out, vision blackening. By the time someone caught her, she was unconscious. No next of kin was listed, but someone came. Ethan's black car screeched into the hospital lot 30 minutes after the call. He entered with a presence that made staff glance up. Not from recognition, but from the force he carried. A man who rarely stepped into such places unless lives or companies were at stake. He reached her room, opened the door, and froze. She looked small, too small, her have dripped silently, fluids whispering apologies for what her body endured. Her chest rose and fell unevenly. He stepped in, sat beside her, and watched. Then he took her cold hand, pressing it between his, as his mother had done for him during childhood fevers. He closed his eyes. 2 hours later, Sophia stirred, feeling warmth around her hand. Her eyes fluttered open, seeing Ethan. Sleeves rolled up, tie loose, hair messy, as if he'd run his hand through it too often. What? She whispered. You passed out, he said, voice tight. Severely dehydrated, underfeed. She blinked slowly. That's all you've got to say. His voice cracked. She tried to sit up, wincing. It's not a big deal. I pushed too hard? Too hard! He snapped, standing. You work 2 jobs? Skip meals, barely sleep. You think that's nothing? She flinched, not from pain, but from his tone. Then. No, he cut in, pacing, hands clenched. You should have told me. I would have helped. I didn't want help, she said sharply, and the air stilled. He turned slowly. Tears welled in her eyes, her voice trembling. I've taken care of myself since 16. No one shows up, no one stays. I didn't want to owe you. I didn't want you to see me as broken. He moved closer, slower. She wiped her face, ashamed. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to fall apart. You're not falling apart, he said softly. You've been holding the world together with your bare hands. She met his gaze, raw, exposed. He sat again, taking her hand tightly. Not anymore, he said, anger gone, replaced by something deeper. From now on, you're mine to care for. She stared, stunned. He didn't say it like ownership, but like a vow. Tears slipped down her cheeks, and she didn't pull away. For the first time in years, Sofia felt seen, cared for. Not because she asked or earned it, but because someone refused to let her suffer alone. The move happened without words. No official moment, no proposal, no labeled boxes. One evening, Ethan offered to drive Sofia to her apartment. I don't really live there anymore, do I? She said. He nodded once, and her things began appearing in his space. Her scrubs folded beside his suits, her toothbrush beside his, a drawer cleared for her tea, a fuzzy blanket draped on the couch because she was always cold. No whispered, I love yous. No candlelit dinners, no arms pulling her close at night. He took the sofa. At first, she thought it was chivalry, then discomfort, then realized he feared something he couldn't name. He was learning closeness, but slowly. Ethan showed affection in quiet gestures. After her night shifts, a warm container of her favorite food waited in the staff fridge with a note I eat, pleasey. Her photo, a candid from Central Park, laughing, sat framed on his desk in his private office. When she forgot her coat, a courier delivered a tailored, elegant one to the hospital, far too expensive. He never said, I miss you, but canceled meetings to walk her to work. She knew he cared, but not if he understood what that meant. A quiet, soft wall remained unclimbable. He never spoke his feelings, never took her hand in public, never asked her to stay in his bed. Not from disinterest, but perhaps from not knowing how to need aloud. Slowly, that silence wore on her. One evening, Sofia returned from a shift to a quiet apartment. Dim lights, a flickering fire, her favorite book on the couch, but he wasn't there. She found him in his office, staring out the window, his mother's photo beside her own. She stepped inside, voice gentle. You always look at that photo when something's wrong. He didn't turn. It helps me remember. Remember what? His silence lingered. That people like her, and you, still exist. She swallowed hard. Then? She whispered. What are we doing? He looked at her. What do you mean? She gestured between them. We live together, talk, share meals, but we don't touch. We don't say things. I don't know if you want me here. I want you here, he said too fast. Then why do I feel like a guest in your life? Her voice cracked. Why won't you let me in? He looked down, jaw tight. Because once I let people in, they leave. I'm not people, she said. I'm me. I know, he said, voice low. That's what makes it harder. She stared, then said softly, Love you, Ethan. I think I have for a while. He looked at her, eyes wide, but said nothing. The silence stretched too long. She nodded slowly, a sad smile forming. That's okay, she whispered. You don't have to say it. But I can't keep waiting for a man who can't decide if he's allowed to feel. She turned and left the office. That night, she packed her things. He didn't stop her, standing in the hallway, hand on the doorframe, lips parted, body taut, fighting something ancient. But he said nothing. When the door clicked shut, the apartment's silence turned shattering. For days, Ethan moved through his penthouse like a sleepwalker. The fire burned low, her blanket untouched, her teacup in the sink, her scent on his coat. He stood in doorways, looking for her. Meetings lost his focus. Investors were ignored, a multimillion-dollar merger postponed, unprecedented in 15 years. His assistant knocked one afternoon. Mr. Carter. The Tokyo board awaits your confirmation. He stared at Sofia's photo. Cancel it. Sir. Cancel it. He grabbed his coat and left without another word. He needed to find her. It was late when he reached the hospital. Snow fell lightly, steady. The city buzzed as he entered, the air sterile and bright, unlike the warmth she brought. At the desk, he asked for her. The nurse frowned. Sophia Mason. She transferred 2 weeks ago. She's no longer here. No forwarding address. He stood stunned at the lobby's noise. Patients, doctors, machines. fading. She didn't say goodbye, he murmured. The nurse looked up, sympathetic. Are you family? He paused. No, he said quietly. I guess not. But outside, cold air bit his skin. Snowflakes melted on his coat. In the hospital courtyard, surrounded by silent benches and bare trees, his chest tightened. He turned his face to the sky, eyes filling. She was the only thing, he whispered, voice breaking, that made me human. The snow kept falling. Winter returned to New York with soft snow and a gentler city. A year since Sophia left. A year since she walked away from a man unready to love aloud. Now, as head nurse at an upstate hospital, she was stronger. Respected, certain. Yet, on quiet nights with tea, she thought of him, wondered if he'd searched, felt the echo of his unsaid words. Then came a call. Her aunt's mild stroke. Sophia returned to the city, renting near the Upper East Side, telling herself it was temporary. One snowy morning, she wandered familiar streets and stepped into a beloved flower shop, where she'd once seen Ethan choosing flowers for a child. The bell chimed. There he was, back to her, lifting white tulips. She froze. He turned, their eyes met, and the world paused. Ethan looked older, wiser, softer, but still himself. He set the flowers down and stepped closer, not too close. You're coming with me, he said, voice low, echoing a year ago, now raw, real. He paused, eyes steady. If you still want to. I never stopped waiting. Tears welled before she could stop them. She nodded, speechless. He took her hand with care, as if it might vanish. Their fingers locked with the certainty of someone who'd learned loss and would never risk it again. He brought her home, not a penthouse, but a warm apartment near Central Park, filled with plants, soft light, and traces of her. Her blanket, her photo, her presence kept close. You kept everything, she whispered. I kept you, he said. 6 months later, they married on a soft summer morning in the garden of Ethan's restored family home. Laughter lined the aisle, filled the air. Guests were few but dear. Colleagues, old patients, friends who'd seen their story unfold. Among them was the elderly man Sophia cared for at a fundraiser the moment Ethan truly saw her. He spoke at the ceremony. She's always been an angel, he said through tears. No, she's found her guardian. Ethan spoke his vows without notes. I didn't know how to love before you, he said. But I promise every day I'll learn. With you. Sophia touched his cheek, voice soft. We'll learn together. That night, after the last guest left and candles burned low, they sat wrapped in a blanket on their porch, a summer storm humming distantly. Sophia leaned into him, smiling. I never thought a freezing night at a bus stop would bring me home. Ethan kissed her hair, whispering against the wind. That night, I didn't save you. He turned her face to his. You saved me. And that was the story of a freezing night, a silent man, and the woman who taught him love. Sometimes saviors come not with grand gestures, but with quiet kindness, late-night raiment, and a hand held in silence. If this story touched you, if it reminded you love can spark in unlikely moments, please like, share, and subscribe for more real life, inspired tales that heal, uplift, and linger long after the screen fades. Until next time, stay warm, stay kind, and remember, the smallest encounter can change everything.